The community of practice that is focused on reaching net zero emissions finds itself in a confusing phase. More than ever, we're confronted with deflating and anxiety-producing information about missed tipping points and rising emissions versus falling emissions. Yet, we know we need to keep up the momentum. We need to double down on our efforts and not lose hope or steam. We have come to Gina McCarthy because our community needs to be galvanized. It also needs pragmatic advice from someone who's accomplished really hard things that changed the game. We are honored to have with us Gina McCarthy, who was White House National Climate Advisor and Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Welcome, Gina. We know we have the tools to drive the emissions reductions that are necessary now. And the other thing we know is that we need to go much further, much faster. What advice do you have for this community around how to accelerate this action?
We have an opportunity of a lifetime here to shift to a clean energy economy. It's not just something in the future, it's actually happening today. So the first thing I'm going to say is be hopeful. Just get moving. Be excited about the technologies we have today. Every year you got to look at what else there is. Every year you got to think positive and know that change will happen, because right now we know that the move to clean energy is not just hugely important, but the reframing that President Biden put on it, that it's an opportunity, that is going to grow jobs, that is going to save families money, that it's going to help us figure out how to address the inequities that have been systemic for decades. If we can make that real, I don't care what pony I'm riding. I don't have to pick one now. I can wait for the next one to come up. But you got to be on the lookout. You got to do the best you can with what you have. But every step of the way, pat yourself on the back. Say, even if I got just a little thing, that little thing could turn into something big. You know, I just think it's too hard a struggle for any one human being to feel defeated because they lost one thing or didn't get what they wanted.
I'm wondering if you can give us some examples or stories from your career doing hard things. Perhaps a situation where there was a seemingly intractable problem that managed to get untangled and managed to get solved. How did it happen?
When I was in the White House, you know, we did a lot to move forward with really 3 big bills that were really important on climate change. And that was the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Chips and Science Act. And it was a big deal, right? And I think everybody knows it took a really long time. And there were a few key sticking points in it. The questions were, do you just give it up and not push now? Do you appease the person? And if you do, you know, will they just ask for more? When, in that circumstance, the thing that you needed to keep telling yourself was that this is worth it. This is worth the wait. So my entire job then was about saying, no, nobody pulls the plug. No, we don't give up. And eventually, what we did was look through options on things that were non-negotiable and shift it in a way that made it amenable. And there was this one thing that we thought was important, and folks on the Hill thought it was important. Someone didn't think it was important or doable. So I can remember going into Ali Zaidi, my deputy, who was the brilliant architect with a couple of other folks in the White House of the IRA, not me. I said, you know these Treasury things way more than I do. If I can't get that, I want you to tell me what the very next best thing is that we could do. I said, there has to be something that gets us 80% of the way there, maybe not 100. And all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, oh, there is something. And I left, that something changed, and the whole thing moved. Because it had to, it was the right thing to do. People were stuck on one answer to a complex problem. It wasn't necessary to get 100% there. What was necessary was to get the people comfortable enough that there was a change there that they could live with, and there was a change in the entire tone of the conversation. And how swiftly it passed from that point forward was really quite remarkable. So I don't really care when people say they're at the dead end or everything's non-negotiable. Everything is negotiable. There is no such thing as a dead end. And you have to just keep working it. And if you can't figure out the straightforward way, then you go around another. You find another champion, you find another way to address it, you work something out. Because these things are too important to just let them die. I think that's hugely important for people to try to divorce themselves as a person from the job they're doing. I mean, you always bring yourself into it. But if you miss the mark, if you get criticized, you pull up your big boy pants, right? And you say, okay, I'm going after it again. What did I do wrong? How do I think differently? Who is my ally in these? What's the challenges? And you just do it again. It's not life-threatening to be criticized. First calls I made after a rulemaking were the ones who would hate it, because I wanted them to understand that you do the best you can. You have a law, you have science, you follow it, and you do the best you can to mitigate the impacts that people don't want and to maximize the impacts that you can. It is all about who you're doing something for. It's not about who you're fighting against. That's the least of your problem. The bigger benefit and opportunity is to actually just get in people's heads, understand where they are, and understand what to them makes their life better. If you do that every step of the way, it doesn't matter how difficult the problem is. You can frame it in a way that it's meaningful, in a way that it's hard to fight against. I've never thought unanimity was really the way to go, because generally it means that everybody gives up a lot to get there. I'm not real thrilled with doing very little over a length of a long time, especially with an issue like climate. So you got to go for it. Don't worry so much about where we're going to be in 10 or 15 years. Worry about what you're doing today. Worry about the creativity you can bring to the table, because if you do, we will get there.
Gina McCarthy, it has been absolutely inspiring to talk with you, and I can't thank you enough for being with us at GreenBiz Net Zero.